It's another Badge Bros Fantasy Sanctuary crossover. We got RotoRun himself here. We're going to draft in Ball Mania together, talk about some elite tight ends, answer your questions as we go. This is Fantasy Sanctuary Underdog Best Ball Show. Let's get into it. That is right. Myself and Tyler, like every Monday, and joined by the multi-sport draft elite, John from the Badge Bros. John, I could ask you so many questions to start this show, but the big one that everybody has been talking about in our circles over the last few days is George Kittle still an elite tight end?
I mean, if Brandon Ayuk's on the move, absolutely. I think like in a vacuum from like the mantra and the debates that have been going on, I think he classifies. I really liked Pete's definition of it, just utilizing any 2 tight end build that if I feel comfortable enough to make it a 2 tight end build, then it classifies as an elite tight end build because yeah, I mean, I can't think of a better way to describe it than that. But I think in a vacuum, I would say that George Kittle, yeah, elite tight end for me.
Pete should have put an asterisk that said everyone but John if 2 tight end makes you comfortable, because John's like, I'll push it. And I'll have 2 garbage cans I'm comfortable with.
It's true, man. It's true. I got some gross ones, especially if we go back to like some of the big board stuff there. Like I got some really unhealthy, uncomfortable 2 tight end builds right now.
Like for me, when I think about like the elite tight ends, it's like going, it's not about saying, okay, what are they going to give me in total points or various things across the course of the season, but it's like those tight ends who can get you 100-yard games, and I think Kittle might be on the edge of that now. But like, there's so few tight ends who can really do that. So yeah, I've been kind of leaning towards on other more substandard platforms drafting Kittle in 3 tight end builds, but I think here on God's game, on God's platform, that it makes sense to be still adding him in 2 tight end builds. Is elite tight end something you've been doing a lot of, John?
You know what? Almost to a fault early on, I think. Yeah, I was so many times I wanted to. I think my philosophy on elite tight end doesn't stem from how I feel about the tight ends and stems more from my kind of like philosophy on quarterback this year. And I think that's funneled me to wanting to only allot 2 roster spots to the tight end position. So that's kind of been for me where I've been going. So yeah, I've been really trying to have like 1 in the first 7, 8-ish rounds if I'm really pushing it. I think maybe the tipping point for me would be like a Brock Bowers or stacked Njoku. I think that's probably the end of like elite, but as Tyler alluded to, I'm willing to push it.
Yeah. So like, if you had a preference out of the 2, which would you rather push to 3 out of the onesies? Would you rather have 3 quarterbacks on a team as like, a big wide? I realize there's a lot of nuance to this anyway, but like, would you rather have 3 quarterbacks on a team or 3 tight ends on a team?
Currently, it's been 3 quarterback. I've really enjoyed just the way that those teams turn out, and I think it's because I'm trying to win the flex more this year, like just in quotations. That's kind of been like my MO. And I don't really care who my quarterbacks are as long as they make sense in the context of the roster. So like the team that we drafted today on Best Ball Breakfast would be like a really good example of that, where it's like, yeah, I'm plenty fine having like Bryce Young and Justin Fields as like the last 2 quarterbacks, but I'm not as fine if you're like, hey, you're left with Isaiah Likely, Chig, and I don't know, insert dart throw round 18 tight end, right?
Yeah, and I was talking to some folks in the ship chasing Discord about this over the weekend, because of course that was all the talk of the town. And what we kind of settled on is like, Leone's research shows the power of 3 stacked quarterbacks through the 3 weeks of gauntlet and the finals, just having access to those stacks. But like, tight end so volatile that like your best bet, if you are punting it or if you are like consolidating it down, is just stacking up those quarterbacks and those tight ends, so that if and when the touchdowns align, then you have rocket ship emoji exponential rise in the stack itself. So like if you are probably like punting off those gross tight ends, your best bet is just to just make sure they stack with your quarterback and go with God at that point. Because if you're going to make it a gross volatility play anyway, you may as well make it when they just randomly catch 2 touchdowns, a la Jawan Johnson, Hunter Henry-esque, It's same thing with Chig. I think Chig sucks, but Chig did catch 2 touchdowns randomly one time. So if you're going to have a garbage can, might as well have him catching touchdowns and matching that random spike.
No, absolutely. And I think a lot of that stems from like my like daily mindset, because we do so many of the battle royale ones.
Yeah.
And what ends up happening in those ones is like on a week to week basis, you will see three onesies position players in the top 12 of those drafts. Right. And how do you diversify in an intelligent way? Well, it's probably skinny stacking like on the back end, as you're alluding to. Right. Yeah. The Musgrave one's interesting. We kind of glossed over it today when we were just talking, just macro theory and stuff like that. But like, what do you guys think in terms of like, that's a passing offense who people are really excited about, who people are buying into, everyone, is pushing up Dontavian Wicks, blah, blah, blah. Split opinions on the rest of the stuff. But if there is like a legit injury to Tucker Kraft right now, like, should that be a guy that gets thrust up into that like tight end?
I have done a total 2 Texas 2-step on this whole Musgrave thing, because like Musgrave all last camp was being told like, hey, they have like similar draft capital, they look similar guys, but like the coaching staff likes profile of Musgrave as like this seam stretcher deep guy, and we're going to kind of work him in like that. And he was kind of worked like that throughout the entire season. And Kraft is kind of put off to the side as like the more short ADOT stuff. And then, he gets injured and he comes back, and even like on his limited basis coming back from that injury, he's still kind of utilizing that deep seam, broken play, deep play action thing. And now Kraft is missing time with the torn pec, and Musgrave and I think it was Mosqueda, the really plugged in fan on Twitter that was like, let me remind y'all guys, like they like Musgrave a lot. They want him to be kind of that like that guy. And yeah, they'll probably like both guys will probably mix in, but Musgrave's more of that like short, quick stuff as the dump off check down, and Musgrave's going to be operating with those like high value targets, and he's slipping sometimes. And like you alluded to, like, yeah, I think I'd rather go for the random touchdown deep passing spike, like the Kittle spike weeks, like 100 yards and a touchdown. Musgrave's more likely to be that guy, given what we know and how they've been utilized in that offense. And so, yeah, if I miss out on the Dobbs, Watson, Reed pass catchers, I'm targeting Lloyd and Musgrave as my priority love stacks or my Minnesota bringbacks in that way, because, and I was like, oh, I'll arbitrage it with Kraft, but Kraft's hurt, and I'm having to like just come to terms with they just want to use Musgrave that way. So, just believe them and trust them.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I've really struggled with this one, because early I wanted to take more Tucker Kraft, because you look at what he did when he got on the field. Like, he was pretty much an every down snap player. He was playing really well, had like, multiple double-digit points games. Whereas you go back to what Luke Musgrave did, and yes, he's a rookie, so it took time for him. And yes, Jordan Love was sort of getting into the flow. But like Kraft was averaging like 10.5 PPR points, double-digit points in 4 of his 6 games. And I thought this could really be a close competition, but the injury, it just completely resets it. So I think I'll end up taking shots on both of them and just mixing things in a bit.
Yeah.
All right, our gal brain guest, we have the second pick.
Yeah, I mean, I'm totally cool with CeeDee Lamb here. I don't get too crazy at the front end of stuff here. I could see getting overweight and going a little ham on like Justin Jefferson if you want to be that guy, but I think it's part of like a portfolio thing opposed to what we're going to do in one isolated draft. And, starting CeeDee Lamb feels good here.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I like, you guys have heard my whinging about the current state of drafts, which I can enter. So I entered 60 of the drafters $2 slow drafts this week. And the one thing I went into them saying was I'm going to take a shitload of Justin Jefferson. And anytime I can take him, I'm just going to take him once I'm past for 102. And I'm currently sitting at something like 45% Justin Jefferson, and I feel great about it.
Nice.
I mean, that contest, is it time box?
No, well, it's probably going to fill earlier than the main drafters contest, but it's not too hard for that to be the case.
It'll be open at least like 2-ish months, I think. All said.
Yeah, I mean, like it's interesting. Like I could see the argument both ways, where it was like if you want to get super overweight at an isolated time in your portfolio in a long draft window, that makes a lot of sense to me. If there's a time box contest and you want to just take like whoever from 107 through 110 over and over and over again, I can get on board with that too. Like I think it's literally just a risk tolerance exercise, and I think it's a pretty sharp way to do it, especially if you only have like a 10 max style contest that's a time box. Like that would feel pretty sick to just take them 10 times.
So, John, you were tweeting yesterday about how much you're loving seeing people being bold with drafts and testing the limits, particularly when it's coming from like people you know are sharper drafters. Is that something you're doing yourself in BBM, or are you just sticking to the time box stuff for those kind of breaking the mold drafts?
I mean, like if I were a sharp drafter, that's something I would consider doing. I mean, I just ride the coattails of other intelligent people around here, but I mean, I have said for ages, like I am what I preach. Like, you know, like I am the guy who every single day in the baseball contest is taking 6 guys with ADPs north of 33 on the same roster over and over and over again, and just being like, come get it, I know ball better. So like, yeah, in that regard, I do that in the football stuff. I do it more in the time box stuff than in like BBM right now. I am kind of like a tethered to ADP early slappy, but like some of the time box stuff, like I'll flip the board all day because I think the quote unquote second, third, fourth round is like flat as hell. Like I would have no problem right now. This is BBM right now that we jumped in.
Yeah.
Like I would have no problem right now just going Hurts, Devonta Smith right here on this CeeDee Lamb team. Like I think it's probably fine. Like maybe it's jumping the shark a little bit early in this draft season, but I'd be totally fine with it.
And the only reason why I'm not doing that more is because I'm seeing people get that with a falling Hurts in the other round, and I've watched it. Like I've been spite sniped twice on it right in front of me. So I'm like, why? I kind of want this extra third round pick. So with that being said, we're on the clock at 23rd pick.
Did Debo just go?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, Debo went.
Okay.
I don't take a ton of Saquon, but it makes sense with a CeeDee Lamb team, especially when you get a little bit of fall. I don't know how you guys
at least try to push
it.
him to the third and just tempt the CMC team. So with
absolutely.
With that said, how do y'all like these guys?
I like Waddle the best of that bunch.
Yep,
I'm good with Waddle. Yeah, been trying to get more Waddle. Shout out to Bindles, the man, the legend. Like, just drops in on every draft stream around YouTube, constantly going, gifting out 5 Fantasy Sanctuary memberships. Snap them up if you're in the chat. Get into the Discord. You can find yourself loads of stuff in there. All my rankings for Underdog, DraftKings, loads of other resources, including Rich's 200-page rookie guide. We've got 40% off voucher for Spike Week.
We're on the clock. Do we want Smith, Metcalf? What do we like?
Did Saquon go?
Saquon went. He sucked it up.
Devonta for me.
Yeah, let's see if we can't. John, let's try to pull it off. You know what I'm saying? Like I teased it, so let's see if we can't get it back around in this crazy.
If there's a time to do it, it's probably easiest when the Saquon drafter's on your left.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. I just think it's so funny. I'm like, I'd rather push him because if he takes him, I think that just made the CMC team slightly worse, and that helps the pod and us. Yeah. And then at the same time, it's like, if I don't have to say I took him in the second, I feel better too, vibes wise. So it's just we know ball, so we take Saquon in the third.
That's right. That's right.
So we got 2 dual RB teams like at either ends of the draft. John, are you mixing in any dual RB teams? Because like I feel like there's possibly an edge to be gained in it this year. There's so many nice running back values, but I just hate my teams when I do them.
Yeah. No, I feel similarly. Like I think let me look at pull up one of these Dalmatians on the side. I think I did it in one of the 3 Dalmatian slows.
Bold.
Oh, you know what? No, I didn't. I caught a Jonathan Taylor, DK Metcalf, Tyreek Hill start in one of them. No, my bad. In general, no, because like I do think as like the recreational drafters funnel into BBM as we get closer, as the draft window gets whatever, I'll find my way to that sort of exposure by the ADPs creeping up ever so slightly. Like I don't see how, Josh Jacobs, Derrick Henry, like that grouping. I don't see how the recreational drafters of August come in here and take Tank Dell, Zay Flowers over that grouping. So I think it's inevitably going to happen for my portfolio. So I haven't really been forcing the issue, but I think I've done a Brees plus Gibbs one, and I've done.
That's a fun
I
one.
did actually done the HN plus CMC a couple times. I do know that I've done that, but outside of that, I'm not really forcing the issue. I'm a glory hole believer.
Yes,
well,
indeed.
That's gal brain wise though, like if you're gonna take HN, who's kind of fragile from like a size, volume perspective, but elite efficiency. It's CMC. If he hits, he's gonna drag whatever shitbones roster with him. As long as the construction is sound, and so it's like having HN, in the pedal car with CMC. That's a pairing I like more than like the Kyron CMC one, just because, in Kyron's really awesome season, you just arbitrage. I take Kyron instead of CMC, like hitting that outcome ceiling. Whereas with like HN, if he hits again with like a 40-point game, like who better to take him all the way through the gauntlet than on a CMC team? And I feel really comfortable in pushing that because I know that when the spikes come with HN, I'm good, and CMC is going to give that like weekly floor. And it's like pairing like Christian Kirk with like a rookie, where it's like, it makes you feel better about the like weekly consistency that may be a little overrated.
No, I think that's a really sharp point. Yeah, that's like something that I hadn't even given like full credit to.
Yeah. And then, it was funny. I was hoping, I thank God, finally getting a top 2 pick. It feels like it's been 7 days since I've gotten a pick above 5 because I was ready to talk about.
How pissed would you have been if I had been like, yeah, man, let's just flip the board and take Puka here and see what happens?
Well, no, okay, that's what I was going to say. I had a whole Galbrain thing ready for Puka, but before we get into that, the 12-hole took a double. Hurts, Allen.
Is Andrews gone already?
Yeah, Andrews just went to triple O cheek. So what do we like here?
You do like a Mahomes Hollywood, something like that. What do you like?
I like that, and then try to get Rice later on works.
Who do you want to take first? Do you think he'll snipe? We'll take Mahomes.
Take Mahomes because then we've still got the out of Rashee Rice, and I'd feel better about that than naked.
Yeah, or
Hollywood.
we could take Pacheco.
Yeah, I was like, yeah. You got Pacheco, you've got Worthy. So I'll give it a moment to percolate. Just because I hate Hollywood, but I'm willing to.
Let's go Hollywood.
Okay.
What is it about Hollywood that you're not in on, Tyler?
I prefer guys to have been good in the last 2 years.
Ever, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and have signed a signal boosting contract that wasn't less money than Jerry Jeudy. APY, but it smells a little like Juju leaving the Steelers to me, unfortunately. Okay. And so I'm really worried that he's like a small win, big miss player. If he's fallen off this cliff as like a dusty, oft injured, smaller guy, and he kind of operates as like a fancy Watson, fancy MVS, and I'm taking him in the top 5 pick. It's a pick I was barely interested in at 60, and now he's going at the 4-5 turn, and I'm having to mix him in every once in a while. For now, like I've stayed open to it, but like I had no problem fading Sky Moore and oh god, what was it?
Yeah, I mean,
like last year,
Justin Watson.
Not no, they were both going top. Oh yeah, Kadarius Toney and like Sky Moore. I had no fear of fading them because I was so confident their profiles were so bad and so poorly priced. And with Hollywood, I'm pretty confident he's dusty, but I'm also pretty confident that like if Rice misses any time and the current coaching staff can get anything out of anybody, it can be Hollywood. I'm just worried that like he looks really good right now in shorts and in camp. And the second Worthy's back on the field, like being a game buster with like routes and speed, that and then Rice is back on the field. I'm just like, what's left for Hollywood to do except grab 3 catches for 40 yards and you just pray it's a touchdown. And that's just not a profile I like there, but I could be wrong.
Yeah,
I mean, like go ahead,
John.
Tom. Sorry.
I think for me, taking Hollywood, I tend to take him on teams where I don't have Xavier Worthy and view it as a hedge against a rookie and go, okay, yes, Rashee Rice hit last year, but we know historically rookies haven't really done particularly well under Andy Reid. And yes, I'm quite high on Xavier Worthy long term, but it's like going, okay, well, if I'm looking at this in a 1-year window, am I just going, okay, Hollywood Brown is the veteran in the room, has flashed at times, by all accounts, is building a good rapport with Patrick Mahomes and just leaning into that. So, yeah, I'm not going to be heavy on Hollywood Brown. I'd say 15% would be the point where I'd even just be then going, this feels like a bit much. But for now, I'm fine mixing him when I can stack him with Mahomes.
Have you considered that the kickoff return rules have changed and Xavier Worthy go Burr?
Yeah, it's a deep scientific thought. And honestly, I probably do need to spend a little more time thinking about the kickoff return stuff. But
that's how Tyreek was used. They were like his high end is like Deshaun Jackson year 1, and his medium outcome is probably like Tyreek year 1, which was not that many routes and catches, but he was seeing every punt and kickoff return, and now the rules have changed in like year 1, and I'm like, I won't be surprised if he catches maybe 500 yards total, but he's got like 11 touchdowns just in like random gimmicky shit because he's better than Kadarius Toney. And Kadarius Toney had a couple games of just gimmicky shit touchdowns.
Yep, 100%. That's kind of a fun thought. I didn't really.
I'm surprised you haven't uncorked that one, my gal brain friend.
John, what do you like in here?
Hopkins is like a tier break for me, or if you guys want to do the Rice stack now, but
I think we can push Rice. I like Hopkins.
Okay. Let's go Hopkins, and then if we get Rice, we could possibly just leave it, at that point and say, okay, we've got a 6 wide receivers, go with the kind of fragile 0 RB build where it's like, okay, we're leaning in.
Do I know my casuals or do I know my casuals? Like,
but just going back to your point about kick returns, like I just think so many of the smart teams are just going to take the touchback. They're going to boot it through the end zone, be happy enough to start the drive from the 30-yard line and not risk it, because once you let that play go live, that is where things are going to get a bit more difficult. But I saw a stat on Twitter that 90% of drives that started at the 25-yard line last year reached at least a 30-yard line. So you're really not giving up much. So
and yet teams are still trying. Like you see teams like, we can get it and celebrate the 5-yard gain. Yeah.
I think it's maybe less teams are trying it and more players are like, this is my time to showcase, right? Because if you're a special teamer that like doesn't get on the field a whole lot, it's like, all right, this is my time. If I go nuts right here and I show that I can turn what everybody else is 5 yards into like 40 yards, maybe this is going to bode well for offensive snaps in the future.
I'm even more hyped for Worthy because he feels like the guy that's like, man, I haven't gotten 10 touches yet. Let's take this baby to the house.
Let's go back to the Hollywood Brown one for 1 second, though. I mean, like, he was pretty hurt, and he was like, if I remember correctly, because like from the daily stuff, like we were looking at him with a Q tag over and over and over again from like week 7 or 8 onward. And those initial weeks where they played like more traditional style offense without Kyler there, like he was double-digit targets every single week. Now, he might have been like the only dog in town there, and Trey McBride hadn't fully broken out yet, and blah, blah, blah. You can say whatever, but like I do think there is something in between what he was year 2 with Baltimore and what he was year 2 with Arizona. Like between those like 2 molds, I think there might be like something there where it's like, let's give him the best coach he's ever had in his life. Let's give him the best quarterback he's ever had in his life, and let's just see what happens kind of deal.
Yeah, and
Blasphemous that.
to your credit, like, I was arguing with someone in chat on a stream like last week about like
no
Hollywood, and so I went back and I was like, all right, let me challenge my priors. Let me go look at his stats, and I was shocked at how many double-digit like targets and points games he had, considering how bad the offense was before Kyler returned in like week 10 or 12, I think it was. And I'll
he
caveat,
he didn't play the last 5 weeks of the season, or 6 weeks of the season.
Yeah. So I was like, okay, he wasn't as bad in like the end result, but he's got a lot more target competition now. And like I think highly of Worthy. I think highly of Kelsey still, like week in and week out, like what they're going to design for him. Rice, when on the field, is going to he's still crushing in early parts of camp. Again, lots of caveats and disclosures. So I guess I get to just say I'm worried about how Hollywood's body's going to hold up.
Well, the one thing, like, and we could end up turning this into a long conversation about him, but he was very underrated in the red zone. Like, he had a really good stretch in Baltimore. I think he had at least 7 touchdowns each year there, and a bunch of them came in the red zone, which isn't what people associate with him. They think he's a deep threat, even though he's possibly not as good a deep threat as some people think. And I think, if you're looking at Patrick Mahomes and he's looking for players he can trust in the red zone, I just kind of believe that these couple of years that he's had in Arizona where it just really hasn't happened for him around the goal line, that he can bounce back to being a guy who gets 7 or 8 touchdowns, and the value in that should be pretty decent, I would like to believe. But we're a couple of picks away here. Are you thinking running back, guys? We're in round 8. Oh, shit.
I was about to say Tyler's face froze there for a second, and I was like, I hope he's on one with this next pick, because these 2 picks are going to be like pretty important for us. We did see that running back run on the other side of the board, and I was like, "Ooh, man, we might be hung out to dry a little bit here, where we just we aped in hard on that wide receiver stuff." But there's probably a couple targets there. Let's see.
So Ramondre went, Jalen Warren went, but I mean, I talked about this in the running back video I put out yesterday. There's so many running backs in this range, and so many of them who feel like good choices. It's why it just feels completely fine to just keep pushing it and just saying, you know what, we'll just keep leaning into it, take shots. And Meatwad says in the chat, get ready to learn Brian Robinson. I fucking love Brian Robinson. I'm sitting at like 20% Brian Robinson, and I'll keep hammering Brian Robinson all day because I just do not believe that Austin Eckler's a good choice. So Tyler says, lol, we have crashed, but I'm in the chat. Tyler, if you could tell us who you're drafting, that'd be great.
Well, let's talk about that little like pocket right here, because I'm looking at ADP real quick here. And I guess Ramondre went on the other side of the board, who was a target that you liked. You said you liked the Brooks one, and
I like Brooks.
Warren was another one you liked.
Yeah, I mean, Warren, we kind of all like Warren, don't we, as Zero RB bros and the Twitter stream community. But I quite like James Conner as well. I know that people say, okay, he keeps getting banged up, but he still played in 13 games in both of the last years. And when you look at what he did with Kyler on the field last year, he averaged 18 PPR points in those games compared to 11 in the games without him. He finished the top 36 running back in 75% of his games last year, and you're getting him at sort of RB27 value. So I'm completely fine with that. I think it's one where if I'm taking James Conner, I want to pair him with a couple of rookies in like Marshawn Lloyd, Jalen Wright, that range.
Okay.
Because you just want to be thoughtful with some of these veterans when you're drafting them at that kind of range, isn't it? It's like saying, well, if he loses his job by the end of the season, how can I offset that? So hitting a double tap with James Conner and Jonathan Brooks, or one of the guys who comes a bit later. And then I'm taking Raheem Mostert. I know that's probably one which a lot of people aren't in on, but Mostert's role feels fairly sticky. I don't think I want to be, 20-25% on a guy who's like, 31, 32 now, but a player who scored 21 touchdowns likely isn't going to lose his role completely unless he gets injured. I mean, if Mostert stays healthy, if Jalen Wright turns out to be not an impressive rookie, where's Raheem Mostert finishing this year?
Yeah, RB 12, something like that. Like, maybe even higher. If he does the same output as last year, he finished as RB 2. So I mean, like, yeah, the one thing about like the Jalen Wright stuff is like they didn't draft a guy to fully replace that Mostert role, right? Like they drafted an auxiliary back to be like another piece to that rotation. All right, what'd we end up with, Ty?
Okay, so while crashing, I thought I had two thoughts. We need a running back, and I need a log off so no one watches me take Brock Bowers' ADP. But no. I figured I put my John cap on while having to hard reset my entire setup that just decided to die. And I heard John say, if we took Mahomes with no Kelsey, how do we leverage that? We leverage it with one of the biggest gam yams that come out of college in the last 2 decades, and Brock Big Hawk Coward and Bowers, and we got elite tight end. So you know what? we make lemonade. You know what I'm saying?
I like that thought process for sure. I mean, he's not a guy that I've been selecting a lot, but I'm obviously warming up to it with how much that Siegel is all in on it. This feels like running back to me, unless you guys want to do like Goddard and shut it down, and you get that week 17 with Dallas.
I prefer to push it a little further and get some running backs. Who do we like here?
I'm not mad keen on any of these guys. So yeah, I mean, I know some people I've been drafting with bringing in on Gus Edwards. I don't hate it, but I'm not mad. Yeah, I don't know.
Okay, we all just kind of stared each other down as we got Javonte, which I guess if we're gonna do a draft where I don't take a lot of like Hollywood, don't take a lot of Hollywood, don't take a lot of Javonte, don't take a lot of Bowers. So just stick them all on the same goddamn team and let it cook.
You know what? That's actually funny that you say that, because I kind of feel similarly about all three of those. Like, I don't think I mean, Hollywood, I take the most out of that group, but Jalil's one of my higher owned running backs right now. So I've kind of been in that camp. And yeah, I was kind of taking maybe not Worthy over Hollywood, but when I was doing the Mahomes stuff, I was doing it primarily with Kelsey.
Do you want to double down with the gross and just stack up Zeke with Lamb? No. Do you prefer Dowdle?
Do we want Dak in this range, or is Dak gone already? Sorry,
Dak went. Yeah,
Dak's gone.
Yeah, let's just reach for a running back we like. John, who do you like? Tell me who you like.
I think I like Sharp's the best out of this group.
Yeah, Sharp works.
I think this is a range where they are all the same. ADP is fake. Take who you like. Take who stacks.
Yep.
So Tyler, for those of us who missed out for a minute,
you couldn't see through the black darkness
no.
who we were drafting?
But first, shout out to the chat. We just hit 2,300 subscribers. Appreciate each and every one of you hitting that button. We've got loads more coming on this channel. We've got John Daigle from Established to Run on Wednesday for a DraftKings draft. Steph Miller, legendary upside, who is in the chat tonight with us, will be with us next Monday. Ian Hartitz next Wednesday with me. And then Pete Overzet for a Friday afternoon draft the following week. Tyler, hit him with the team.
All right, we have a 1-3-6-1. We're fighting all the elements out here, guys. Like, this is the equivalent of a 0-degree snow game over here when your computer crashes. We got Patrick Mahomes, James Conner, Javonte Williams, Zach, nice glass of Chardonnay, CeeDee Lamb, Jalen Waddle, Devonta Smith, Hollywood, can you do it one last time, Brown, DeAndre, Gam, Hopkins, Rasheed, please don't go to prison, Rice, and Big Cock Brock Bowers.
It's not bad. I mean, it's not something that I typically do. I mean, even this afternoon, like the other one was not something I typically do, where like we tacked on a fifth wide receiver that just kind of like didn't make that much sense to me. And I was like, at least this one made sense because you get the double stack with Rice, and then we can kind of land that plane. Yeah, I don't know. Like maybe it feels a little bit better if we get one of those other running backs to fall out of that grouping. Maybe I'm just hung up on the fact that like James Conner and Javonte Williams and stuff are just names that I don't love. So maybe that's what I'm hung up on. But like structurally, it kind of like it makes a lot of sense right now.
I mean, we hit the running back and the tight end glory holes at the same time. we hit them both. We just
if
double
Tajay Spears, Devin Singletary, Brian Robinson, or Chase Brown had fallen to us, I'd feel slightly better about it. But I mean, Javonte Williams is probably one of the players who's got the largest range of outcomes. There's people within our kind of Twitter circles who really believe he can hit in a massive way this year, and then there's people who believe Jaleel can hit in a massive way this year, and I tend to err towards the cheaper versions in those moments. But yeah, I mean, I don't hate it. I mean, we've taken Javonte a couple of times on stream now, Tyler, and I know you don't like him, but sprinkling a little exposure.
Well, like I said, I have to give Ben Gretsch credit that like he's presented the bull case is Peyton acknowledged that he was going to be closer to form physically in year 2 after the double ligament injury and expects him to do so and has said he does so. He didn't bring in anyone of consequence from like a draft profile or draft capital perspective, like really and truly. You can like estimate, but like saying he looks like Kyron Williams rookie year is not a compliment. And P. Ryan is a potential cut candidate. And if he gets cut, he saw a lot of that. Like, I think he saw like 30 or 40% of the passing down work. And that's likely to be absorbed by Javonte, not by Estime. And the beat is saying, worst case scenario, it's a 40-40, 50-40 split, with Jaleel getting, these like change of pace touches. So that means that like, Javonte's potentially the goal line and passing down back that's in a backfield that's going to see top 5 running back targets and in the 100-ish range with a week 17 game against Cincinnati, who should be firing on all cylinders. That's not the worst thing in the world, because what if we're wrong about the splits? What if we're wrong about the health? And what if Javonte just sees 60% of the work in an offense that peppers running backs like crazy? Like it's not insane. So I have to just acknowledge uncertainty, even if I don't love the profile.
I respect that, man.
We're a couple of picks away. Anybody in the QB queue that we might be wanting to take? Like, seems like just more and more fallers there over the last week. But
well, I will say the fun thing about Javonte is he opens up a very backdoor friendly quarterback. So running backs here we like.
We haven't taken enough Ty Chandler after starting like our first 4 streams consecutively taking him, so I'd be fine with Ty Chandler. John, are you in on Ty?
Yeah. Let me see what else.
What do you want?
No, I think I like Ty Chandler more than Chubb. I think the Chubb ADP is fake right now, and like you can get him at 160 at isolated moments. So you don't necessarily have to do it now.
And that's where I'm almost tempted to take him if I have like a 0 running back room and I'm like 160. Yeah. How different is that from anybody going after him from like a question uncertainty standpoint?
Yeah, I mean, like if you're a full-fledged week 17 is all that matter, bro. Like there's 2 teams that could potentially be in contention late in the season with big injury risk players who could smash so heavy comparative to their ADP, and it's Nick Chubb and TJ Hawkinson, right? And it's like you just have to run pure AF on the rest of your roster to get them through. But those 2 stand out to me as like huge potential, like 1 week spike separators.
Agreed. Do we want to correlate Musgrave with Chandler, or do we want to correlate Wright with Waddle? These seem like the positions to hit.
I'd lean. Go on, John.
Go ahead, Tom. I was gonna say tight end. I'd take.
Fuck! You guys are killing me.
Dude, you know what it is? Is we can't see the clock. I can't see the clock.
Oh, so that's fair. I'll
let
start
me
counting down. No, you know what the problem is? And I want to say this problem stems from a unique thing. Welcome to a stream with the only tri-country combo. Okay, we've got 3 different countries at the same time, and only one of them is an aggressive, confrontational speaker culture, and the other 2 are very deferential, polite.
I just love that. Actually, Tom, I was going to ask, is UK popping off right now with Euro? Like, is it like just a completely different atmosphere, or is it kind of like just par for the course right now?
Yeah, it just gets a bit nuts, to be
Mhm.
honest. Everything becomes about it. Like the two best things that you can look to buy at this time is always TVs and beer. Like they'll never be
Yeah.
cheaper than when there's a major football tournament on. It's just it's crazy. Like I got to the gym this morning at 8 o'clock on a Monday morning, and normally,
Humble
you're
brag.
expecting it to be busy. Yeah. And it was just empty because everybody was out, and it's, for England, we have a habit of going into these tournaments with a lot of hype and expecting to win. And I
Bring it
just
home.
I stopped following it a long time ago when I became more obsessive with the NFL. But people who know tell me that England have a very good chance to win it. So, you know, I'll watch a bit.
Mhm. When's the first match for England? They haven't
They
played yet,
played
right?
they played yesterday. They
Oh, did
played
they?
last. Yeah. It was what, 3 p.m. Eastern. They kicked off yesterday, and
Mm.
in typical England fashion, the first 20 minutes were incredibly good, and then it became very boring and dull after that. So,
Just like the Revolutionary War, brother.
that's it.
Strong first 20, rough back half.
So, look, let me jump over to this side so that make sure we don't have any more clock snafus,
There
and
we go.
see that clock nice
You know
and
what?
sharp.
I'm not mad about it though, because Jalen Wright is another player I'm not ending up a lot with, and I want pieces of that backfield. And if I'm going to stack up really old James Conner, really old knees, young spirit Javonte Williams, and some darts on ambiguous backfields or standalone or contingent value in Charbonnet and Chandler, then Wright makes sense as like a youthful big pop, backfield. Especially, I'm not taking a lot of Mostert at 32, going on 33 years old, first
Whoa,
season ever
whoa,
truly
whoa,
healthy.
whoa!
So I
He
should.
just turned 32.
Okay, so that ancient dinosaur of a running back. If I'm not taking a lot of him, I should be taking like the young, youthful juice. Right? Even if I don't love his price, but like again, a lot of these guys, it's just similar thesis. Might as well mix it in, get parts of the offense.
All right.
Yeah,
I've
That's what I tell myself. I don't like it.
you missed a nice conversation whilst you were rebooting where I talked about how I am sprinkling in Raheem Mostert and think he's undervalued, but we can
I
just
am
skip
too. I just prefer it in like season long, where like his early season production is valuable. So like on drafters or cumulative scoring in like the marathon, I'm more inclined to take him there. Whereas I don't feel as comfortable with him in like the late season stuff, just because we hate old people in this household. Not kidding.
That's easy
Let's
for you being young to say that.
let's see this build right now. What do we got? 1-5-6-1.
Mahomes, Connor, Williams, Charbonnet, Chandler, Wright. I think we're pretty much done at receiver with Lamb, Waddle, Smith, Brown, Hopkins, and Rice. I could be convinced otherwise, but
I think it depends what we do at the running back, at the quarterback position.
Okay. Are you comfortable going late with Bo, or do you feel like you want to attack something now?
I don't mind going late when we've got Mahomes. In terms of tight end, what have we got there? Because that kind of feels we could take Conklin and then maybe consider Rodgers. And I don't know if you want to play it
I'd
that
rather
way.
punt tight end later and get.
Okay,
Yeah,
4
4.
seconds.
Yeah, Khalil.
Okay, yeah. Take some talent when we're back up against the wall. For this pick, if we do take another receiver and it is Bo, this stacks. But I'm
Moves is
okay
already
also
gone.
finishing up running back here. And if there's a tight end that y'all like, I'm open to it.
Is Mims already gone?
Yeah, I think Mims went. Franklin goes. Yeah, Mims went. Franklin goes. Get ready to learn last round. Josh Reynolds. You want Fant?
I mean, it gives us another backdoor. It gives us week 17 with the Khalil pick that we just made. I mean, I don't love Conklin. Kate Otten, I mean, it's fine.
I'd go Fant over Conklin quite happily. Like,
okay. Yeah. Well, and so, yeah, you know what? And I like that because
The other one we could have done was Chig, and it opens up Will Levis as the backdoor stack.
Yeah, I still think either one of those guys. I have a preferred tight end there as well for back stacking. So it's just really tough because it's like all those guys take late. I'd rather kind of just let the room dictate who I mix and match there. And I want to buy flexibility right into the last second because this room is very. I have no idea what this room is going to do. Like both ends are doing their own thing.
Yeah.
But from the tight end perspective, though, I think one of the ways to, if you're not gonna do elite tight end in your room or in your portfolio a whole lot, then you need to be targeting these like breakout profiles. And so it's like, probably mix in some of the dustier vets of like Henry and whatever. But if you're really gonna outperform that from a late tight end build, you're gonna want the Musgraves, the Tucker Crafts, if that changes news over the summer, your Noah Fants, like guys that could break out, Ben Sinnott to like a different contingent level, but like guys that have breakout potential a la McBride, a la Laporta at their lower ADP, and they just way outperform there. And so like Noah Fant, like I don't love it, but like it's cheap. He's he has the runway to like do all the routes and potentially a much more efficient passing offense. So yeah, I'd much rather do that than Otten, because like Otten's the Higbee play from years ago, where he's gonna run all the routes, and if you're in a pinch, like it's guaranteed routes, random touchdown spikes, but he's gonna be a real small win if he doesn't hit that like multi-touchdown game in the finals, right? Versus Noah Fant can outperform over the course of the season and be a huge leverage piece for the roster in and of itself.
Yeah,
I'm kind of a little surprised with how Cade Otton finished in the actual playoffs and like the games that didn't really count for fantasy, that he hasn't been pushed up a little further. I'm not drafting him particularly, but I just think, maybe we all are just getting a little bit sharper that people aren't pushing him further because of that small sample size when he's been largely just complete toilet for the rest of his career.
To answer this question, because we have a 0 running back room and we have no idea who is gonna like miss time or come on, especially with Ty Chandler being more contingent. We don't know their standalone role. Khalil Herbert, no idea what he's gonna give us week to week as the RB2 or RB3. Jalen Wright is a rookie, so it's more of just in a 0 RB room. We don't know. And on a team that did not take Brooks, I'm very bullish about Brooks, post week 4 and 6, but like, compensation injuries happen. He's going to miss a lot of camp. Who knows how much he takes in the offense from like a pass blocking perspective? Like that's a question. So in a pinch, I'm going to take a guy on a team that's going to run a lot in a 0 running back room. It's more of just a construction thing.
So we could take either Gino or we could take Bo Nix later on. What's that do for us bye week wise? Is that going to be all right?
Yeah, Mahomes has a 6, and technically we have Gino stacked up with Charbonnet and Fant.
I prefer the Gino pick.
Yeah, Gino for me.
Both Gino? Okay.
Yeah, it's good for me.
Okay, cool.
We got 2 picks left here. What do you guys think structurally? Do you add a third tight end to this because we have the overlapping bye weeks and because...
And because Bowers is like no idea when he comes on, and I've been hammering Jonnu, and he correlates with Wright and Waddle as a high scoring offense, and we've gotten a lot of good news from McDaniel about how they might use him and how his yak like fits into the offense.
Yeah, no, I like that.
Yeah, I think that makes complete sense, particularly for this build, and I think then it just kind of freezes up. We could either go running back and outweigh the wide receivers because we just hammered them so much early and make it a bit of a different build, or we can take a wide receiver that gives us a little correlation or stack or a bit of value perhaps. But when you've got this kind of build that we've got at this point, there's just pressure's off. Just let the draft board come to us, really. John, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask, as one of the pioneers of the scroll the fuck down movement, have you got anybody that like in the 18th round that you find yourself like 2 or 3 guys who you're really scrolling down for a lot of the time?
Like consistently scrolling, no. Like the another portion of the flat at quarterback that is like stemming to all this is like my scroll the F downs are always just like a correlated piece that I don't think enough people are getting to. So like I've done Noah Brown, like where it's like everyone's smacking this offense. This offense is supposed to be great. Like what if one of those wide receivers goes down and we get exactly what we got last year from Noah Brown? Or the one that I floated today where it was like, why don't we just do Trey Palmer instead of McMillan as the run back? Because
right.
It's like everyone and their dog who has the same setup and situation is just going to click McMillan over and over again. Not that I don't like him, like good UW boy, but like still, right? I mean, just give yourself outs to something that's like completely different, even if like you're structurally the same through like the first couple rounds. And what are we talking in terms of like mean projection or mean output over the course of the season? Like maybe you miss like one spike week, but you trade it for the optionality of I don't know. I think we get hung up too much on the notion of like who's the next Puka, who's the next Kyron, and like the reality of it is like they probably don't exist, like just flat out. So I'm like, what kind of isolated bring back or what kind of isolated third stack option or something like that could break a slate in a contrarian way in week 17?
Well, even to your point, yeah, the next Kyron and Puka may not exist, but the next or Tank, but the next Trey Palmer could exist. A rookie last year who had three games with long touchdowns, one in the playoffs, if not two in the playoffs, just random like 2 or 3 touchdown grabs. That guy like right now looks a lot like Devontae Walker, and I'm sure we're gonna hit other guys like Anis Smith and or Johnny Wilson, which either one of those dudes that like emerges as
Johnny
the wide
Wilson
receiver
one,
3.
like we all just fell out of love with him because of the landing
So
spot. And
quickly.
it's like he like Julio had multiple touchdown catches in 2 games last year. Did he not?
Quez got there in week 17 and 16 last year.
Right. So it's like, why are we writing off a guy that we loved his athletic profile and people were speaking so highly of when he went to a good, competent offense that's probably going to score 20 more touchdowns than New England's going to, and yet everybody wants to click the New England players?
Right.
So go on, John. Take us home.
Let's do Trey Tucker. Is that crazy? We already made the Vegas bet. The Vegas playoff schedule, I mean, like, a lot is going to change, but like you get Atlanta, you get Jacksonville, and you get at New Orleans. Like those all feel like low-key duster shootouts that I would be targeting if we were playing daily slates. Least talked about ever, day 2 draft capital guy. Do I like it a little bit better if we had like Minshew as a third QB or something on this roster? Yeah, maybe, but like the fact that we're already making a little bit of a Vegas bet with Brock Bowers stuff, it's like, why not?
Right.
Love it.
Well, and then from a Galbrain perspective, like Adams could get traded mid-season or could just do the Keenan thing of like, I'm banged up and I'm not coming out to play, knowing I'm not going to be here next year. Deuces. And Jacoby is the only other legit receiver on that roster. Tucker looked interesting last year, just wasn't running enough routes. So what happens if either Adams or Myers misses time or, whatever, like that's an out just for like routes. And if you're running like 80% routes, like that's an easy win late in the season.
You take away Hunter Renfrow from that offense too, who was always like that safety blanket, play some slot. Right. Like now he's no longer there. So it's just kind of like, man, that depth chart is like so thin. What are we going to do with this? I don't know.
With a team that wants to win and protect its coach too. Like say what you want about Alec Pearson but like they're going to play hard and they're going to try to win. And they might be behind a lot more than they think they are with Zamir getting 20 touches a week. And if we're not taking Zamir at price, then we should just chase the passing offense and some of the ancillary pieces.
And sorry, Tom, I cut you off again. Just to the point of like the coaching change, it was like he didn't eclipse more than 3 targets in the first like 10 weeks of the season last year. And then all of a sudden they end up changing coach and it's like 4, 5, 5. He had a 7 target game in there. I don't know. I'm just spitballing from memory, but it's like something to that magnitude where it was like all of his, I mean, granted he was a rookie and all of rookie production is usually backladen like that, but like at least we saw a little bit of it.
Right.
I was just going to reinforce the point you kind of mentioned already, John, that like when it comes to these players, like I know Leone did a lot of good work talking about live players and having as many live players as possible for week 17. But I just don't feel bad about ever leaning towards correlation or like a stack or a non-QB stack where it just puts more of our chips in on one offense and gets us more condensed slightly. So I'd say that every day of the week. Tyler, can you break it down for us and give
Sure
the
can.
audio listeners it?
I just want to give some hype to John's little sleeper pick of Trey Tucker, because Rich Rebar's talked about this with Palmer and Tucker. It's just like, hey, live players, and you mentioned this, like, but like if they're on the roster and they have a role, even if that role is wide receiver 3, that's better than a guy that may not make the roster. Your Chase Claypools, your undrafted or late round rookie like running backs, like those guys that like have to find a role on special teams or they're dust.
Mhm.
That's a worse bet from like this early in the offseason. So like Tucker proved himself last year, and I had to laugh because Player Profiler has his best comparable player as Mecole Hardman, which is hilarious for so many reasons. And his
so Taylor Swift's a big fan of him, then.
Right, exactly. Yeah. What if the guy you need is Vegas Hardman? But like his ADOT last year was 18.4 yards, which is insane. He had 4 red zone targets, 3 red zone receptions, and he had a 15.2% air yard share. So like he's like Vegas Slayton. That's not bad.
That's not bad. Yeah. Especially like if they gave Minshew starter money and he slang it at the end of last year a little bit.
Famously had 2 touchdowns in a 20-point game in week 15 last year against the Chargers. And then week 18, 14 points, just all the catches with no touchdowns. So it's like, yeah, this is a guy that could grow with a year 2 role. And unlike Palmer, didn't get competition added in the form of a really exciting rookie profile.
Good point. Yeah.
But yeah, we finish up with a 2-6-7-3. Patty Mahomes and Geno Smith, 20 picks after ADP with a guy that's getting like as a news hound. All the things I'm reading about Geno is he's fitting well in the offense. They're putting more on his plate. The offense is going to ask more of their quarterback. And that sounds like somewhere where Geno can win versus like, the guy behind him who really struggled in Washington. Like I know people like him from a fantasy perspective, but like McDonald's a defensive head coach, and the quarterback taking a shit ton of sacks and having a shit ton of turnovers, that doesn't usually like mix well with that pairing. But running back James Conner, Javonte Williams, Zach Charbonnet, Ty Chandler, Jalen Wright, Khalil Herbert, a little bit of everything there. CeeDee Lamb, Jalen Waddle, Devonta Smith, Hollywood Brown, DeAndre Hopkins, Rashee Rice, and Trey. What if he's the guy you need? Tucker, aka Vegas Hardman, with Brock Bowers, Noah Fant, and Jonnu Smith at tight end.
It's not bad, boys. It's not bad.
It's fun.
I like it. I think, ultimately the Trey Tucker pick is a luxury pick because of the strength of that wide receiver room. So it's like, what do we lose when we lose on that pick? Literally nothing. Like if he pops off, it's just playing with house money. But for the rest of it, we've got such a strong wide receiver room that if Trey Tucker is in that lineup, he's either gone big and really playing well above expectation, or we've cocked up some of our picks along the way.
Or someone just misses time. Like injuries famously with Jalen happen a lot, so it's not bad to have a little bit of spike week depth.
Do you guys think this roster plays better? I'm kind of like a try and cap 5, and I think this is like kind of going full circle back to the elite tight end conversation that kind of like started this all. It's like I've tried to kind of cap mentally the onesies at 5, but do you guys think this roster plays better where it's like, what is Trey Tucker actually like? I know we just said all those nice things and whatnot potentially, but it's like, what is Trey Tucker really doing for this roster? Let's just add Bo Nix to this and like spend 6 spots at the onesies. What do you guys think about that versus like trying to take a ceiling shot at a late round wide receiver?
So like for me, I've been building more balanced with the 1Z positions this year than I have in previous years. In previous years, I've leaned into fragility a little bit. And the more and more like you look at data and like the builds that succeed, and the more it kind of comes back to the fragile teams will be in and around there. But the balanced teams seem to get up there and be dominating. And part of that comes back to that more people are doing the balanced teams. But I
Right.
think I'm just more willing to, when we get to late July and August, I'm going to really start leaning into things and building much more fragile. But right now, at this kind of point where we're still so far away from knowing an awful lot of stuff, that I'm kind of okay just taking the extra onesie positions and just padding that room out a little bit more.
Fair enough.
I mean, I play it just like everything is viable. It's just about what are you trying to accomplish? And, part of me is thinking, if we were going to do 3 quarterbacks there, we did it the right way. Where like the last 3 picks are the quarterback, or out of the last 3 picks, 2 of those are your quarterbacks. So like from a draft allocation standpoint, like you took one early, but then your last 2, much like if you would like an elite tight end with 2 padded dust balls to like help pad the volatility. So I think that's viable. And I think it's extremely viable when you have them stacked up. In our case, I probably go Bo if we have one of his pass catchers, considering we have the running back. And we talked about like, yes, his path there is running back targets, but how likely is it that it's like, touchdown throws? I don't know. Right. I think if we had taken a Mims or a Franklin, I think we all probably go like pass catcher, quarterback. That's an easy connection in so many correlated ways that makes sense. And in that environment, I think, Mahomes taking him there, he's got to have a season like he had, and we had him double stacked. So at that point, I'm comfortable leaning just with that second quarterback. Ideally, I like 3 quarterbacks stacked up. I prefer that a lot. But in an environment like this, where we kind of took a guy, like I think it really comes down to Rice has an uncertain outcome right now in missed games, and we did take 2 guys in Hollywood and Waddle who have. Anybody can get injured, and I'm not prognosticating, but like they both have extensive injury histories. And so at that point, I don't mind leaning into the volatility, chasing the right spike profile, especially when it does correlate from like, a team stack perspective. And it's a young player. Like Trey Tucker's not some 9th year, Khalif Raymond. I think the value in Trey is that what does his second year outlook look like? And what is his outcome with just a chaotic season of injuries or trades or whatever? And I think that's better than, and in that it's torn. I like Bo for the rushing floor. But I think taking Geno there, we said we're good with that. I think if I think about that, it's more of like, hey, I missed out and I'm taking Bo with one of my last picks and then another guy that stacks up. And I think just the way that we did, quarterback ended up going early, tight end kind of went late. So I was okay saying, we waited on wide receiver, and it's a fun room, but Trey is like that's a unique part where like Bo Nix is going to end up being drafted a lot more often than Trey will when it all comes down to it. So if this roster does what it does, I like having a receiver that could be a really unique leverage piece in that final week.
I think like so much of it, this team for me comes back to we're counting on the Chiefs bounce back. We're saying that Mahomes is going to be good. We're saying, okay, Hollywood's going to work out. We're saying Rashee Rice isn't going to be suspended for an entire season or something. So like, I'm completely fine just saying the chips are built around that, and then everything else just kind of comes after that. And as long as we built structurally well, which it feels like we did, I like to believe that we have a good chance around that, particularly when we've got some real superstars at wide receiver.
Okay, before I forget, John, it's so funny you said that, like, what if I came on and flipped the board with Puka at 2? I was so ready to talk Galbrain shit with you, with Puka specifically, because I'm like, I get bored doing these drafts, and the 10th time you've taken Puka, Garrett Wilson, whatever with these, I go like, how do these teams play each other? And like last year, the Rams just ran it down the Cardinals' throat every single time they played. And Puka didn't do anything because they were just ripping off 150 yards of rushing. And then I was like, oh shit, like what if the Rams calling card is just running all over? And then I'm like, so what I wanted to ask you is like, if you found yourself right now, and I understand probably early not, but like, I know last year we told ourselves some like narratives of like game script stories and stuff like that. Some of it was ridiculous, like El Nino, and some of it was like legitimate, like personnel and whatever. And so it's like, will you ever find yourself taking sort of like stands like that, where it's like, does that concern you at all that a team has shown an ability to just run all over no matter who is coaching the Cardinals? And then does that make the pass catchers more risky in the finals?
I mean, like, Cardinals have been a run funnel and a tight end funnel since I could remember, 3, 4,
Right.
5, whatever years. I mean, like, anecdotally, I think we could like have that conversation, and we could maybe like isolate one build to like do that with, I guess, from a narrative standpoint, but
not over a
not yet.
portfolio.
Yeah, not yet. And I don't love how it would play over a portfolio, like just in a vacuum, but I've obviously never back tested it, so I don't actually know. But I do like the overarching notion of like people are gonna we are going to collectively like start getting crazier and crazier with drafts, especially as like Underdog has so many more contests this year than they've ever had, kind of thing, where it's like people are just genuinely going to get sick, and we're starting to see it already. Like you look at this draft at the basically as soon as Bijan's off the board, kind of people are just like, okay, now what? Right? Or like Brees is off the board, now what, kind of thing? Like what can we experiment with? And we saw one in an earlier stream draft today where someone double stacked the San Francisco stuff. So I mean, could I see myself being like, hey, let's push up Kyron with Trey McBride in the second and third to get like some weird narrative based matchup for 17 potentially, but like it might be a little too far for even me. But like the stuff that I will get on board with will be less hyper focused on just like the isolated matchup and more on like what two players have never been paired together that are in the same tier in quotations. So like is DK Metcalf and Jalen Waddle really that much different than Marvin Harrison and Chris Olave?
The Waddle supporters would tell you no, because Waddle belongs at the 2-3 turn or in the 1-2 turn.
Yeah. So like, can I see myself doing like stuff like that, but it's not a derivative of like a matchup or a game? Can I see myself just doing like from the 112 Waddle plus DK? Yeah. And like, do I know I'm behind the teams that start CeeDee Lamb, Waddle, and DK? Yeah, 100%. But that just means you have to build the rest of it out in a completely different fashion that basically would stay more tethered to ADP than you normally would, because you have to take people that are on that side of the board, as many as you can that aren't paired with those that are on the left-hand side of the board.
Yeah, and right now that feels easiest to do taking CMC, because you have that kind of like advancement padding in theory of like, the 101 running back who's going to have, if things go right, he's going to have one of the highest advance rates of any early round player. And so that allots you a little bit of like messing around with combos, and you don't have, your margin of error becomes better for like your combinatorial randomizing. And that's what I've been playing around with personally.
Cool. Yeah, no, I really respect that. That's great.
One more narrative one for you though, because I know you're not into it though, but like we talked about, like, teams, Philly always bad against tight ends. And I know Jake Ferguson's is getting shit on as like not a real elite, not an access to an elite, a small win, a big loss type of guy. And I keep coming back to, this guy has 3 touchdown week ceiling, and Philly sucks against tight ends, and Cooks is an old man, and Tolbert is a jag. And in a catch-up game where Brown's going nuke, Jake just roasting shitty tight ends because they give up like tight end stuff. I find myself doing Ferguson bringbacks to Hurts a lot because it comes back to it so easily. And it's one of the few, Ferguson is like that access to like actually being the second target on that offense. And so it feels impossible to get a CD bring back on Hurts. Like, it's very, very hard, but it's very easy to get a Ferguson bring back on Hurts. And that's one I've really enjoyed from a narrative standpoint, and then like a constructual like correlation standpoint.
Yeah, I like that narrative a lot. I mean, I'm not as against the Ferguson stuff as like some of the other members of the community are, because I do think that ceiling definitely exists. Like we've literally seen it, and like that's the team that threw the ball the most last season, and they were one of the ones that we were expecting to be regression candidates once Kellen Moore left, right? And it's like, oh, they're not going to throw it as much, and that's why everybody was down on CeeDee Lamb and Dak comparatively last year. And then they come out and they throw the most, and they throw for the most passing touchdowns in football, and they haven't done much to get better on offense in terms of pass catchers. So why not just target the dude that they literally hashtag follow the money narrative, and a guy that is like a seam stretcher? Yeah, no, I think it's totally fine. I think it's really cool,
especially with like some defensive regression. You know, they just lost their coach, and they can't be counted on to like be this juggernaut of a defensive front again. You know, pinning health and all this other stuff. So it's a fun offense to target.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to fade a guy who led all tight ends in red zone targets when so much from like you go back to week 1 last year, and one of the biggest narratives coming away from it was how much red zone stuff was designed for Jake Ferguson. Like, I get that's fragile. I get that touchdowns aren't, sticky year to year, but like the Cowboys haven't done anything on offense. If anything, they've gotten worse. It's like, yeah, I'm completely fine taking Ferguson. For me, Ferguson's a player that I want, if the best ball community is fading Jake Ferguson and pushing back on him, he's a player that I'd like to gain a bit of leverage by being overweight on him.
Yeah,
I respect that.
Yeah, that's another thing I'm being mindful of a second year in a row is like some of the sharpest drafters are the ones with like the heaviest involvement in the final week. And how do I leverage myself against the sharpest rosters in the finals who are making up like 40% of the finals? And it's by potentially mixing up who's on my roster from like a player take or like a correlation standpoint. And one of the ways is by being Galbrain about these narratives. Another way, easy way, is just scrolling down and just changing up the guys you're adding as bringbacks at the back end of the draft, like we did today with Tucker.
Yeah, I respect the hell out of that.
So, I mean, we're taking up enough of your time, John, but like, what have you got going on with the Badge Bros this week on the channel?
Primarily daily stuff. We're definitely going to do some football stuff. We got no Pete on Wednesday. That's why we did best ball breakfast today. So, or best ball brunch, as I like to call it.
Hell yeah, brother.
And yeah, we'll probably do paywall stuff on Friday, but we will do definitely one more football show this week, and then 2 of them will be baseball plus football or baseball plus. I think we're going to try and do a double dribble. I think we're going to do one of our first NBA drafts for next season already. So I don't know if I'm mentally prepared for that one, but we will try our best.
You're an athlete. You're a cross sport athlete, John. We believe in you. Kick flip into those streets with confidence.
Hey, can you still bust out some kick flips on those things behind there?
You got to pay to play, baby.
So when we get to 3,000 subscribers, Taylor will be doing kick flips on stream. You heard it
I
here
will
first.
break my wrist in my own home. It'll be great.
Me and Tyler will be back next Monday, joined by Steph Miller. On Wednesday, John Daigle from Established to Run will be here for a draft on Redacted, as many people would like to call it. If you haven't already, do check out the running back video I dropped yesterday. Not everyone's happy with the new terminology I'm calling the running back glory hole, but hey, it's memorable.
Just like you would hear it. No, go ahead.
No, once you gave the analogy as to why it was called that, I was on board with it. On board with it.
Yeah, I mean, get your minds out of the gutters, guys. It's a digging terminology, and like you'll hear it every other club late at night. Go check out the glory hole, bro.
Look, I mean, not to get off track during an outro, but I used to work on a TV show about gold mining. Like, I can't help it if everybody else just has some other kind of like, knowledge of what that word means. But yeah, go check out that video. Leave me a comment. Leave us a comment after this. Hit the like button. Appreciate everybody in the chat, and we will catch you again soon.